Now I'm recording. Okay. Sorry about that. So, okay, to go back now to our share screen. Okay, so the quality for this month, again, the channel for this month is the channel from Chokhmah to Gvura. From Chokhmah to Gvura. This is the channel. Which means that in order to bring from an intellectual quality into an emotional quality, there has to be some kind of restriction. There has to be some kind of restriction. If we are traveling from above to below, from the intellectual quality to the emotional quality. However, if we're going the other way from the emotional quality to the intellectual quality, that would have to be the opposite. The opposite of tzimtzum, the opposite of constriction is an opening up. In order to be able to get from Gvura to Chokhmah, that would require a tremendous opening up of the person to higher wisdom, to this higher Sefirah. Now, this quality of opening up is really what symbolizes, I suppose you could say, symbolizes or is the characteristic of this month. The characteristic, says the Sefer Yetzirah, of this month is the characteristic of hiluch. Hiluch means walking. Now, let me just explain, as I have explained before, and we actually have a recorded class on this, is that every month of the year is associated with a sense. Now, again, we are usually accustomed to understanding that there's only 5 senses. You know, the 5 senses of seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling. But Sefer Yetzirah explains that there are actually 12 senses. This opens up, obviously, when we realize that there are more than just the 5 senses. This opens up the world to a whole new dimensions, whole new ways of thinking, whole new ways of really relating to the world. So the chush, these things are called chushim, the senses are called chushim in Hebrew. So the chush of this particular month is called chush hahiluch, the sense of movement, of walking, essentially. If you translate it, it means walking, literally, but it also means progress, the sense of progress, the sense of moving towards something. It's a sense of going from one place to another. Now, what was the Yogi Berra statement? If you don't know where you're going, you might never get there. This month, the idea of hiluch is it gives us a destination. The destination of the month is from Gvura to Chokhmah. From an emotional quality to the quality of Chokhmah. Chokhmah in Hebrew can be, if you divide up the word, Chokhmah itself, it divides into koach and ma. Koach and ma means the power of self-nullification, the power of nullification, the power to be nullified. In other words, the power to make ourselves what's called in Hebrew bittul, to make bittul, to be nullified. I can't seem to get this right here. To be self-nullified, koach ma, the ability to be undefined, the ability to be aware of and feel the nothingness that is part of creation, that is part of let's say that is part of what is beyond creation. Creation comes from is called yesh mi'ayin, something from nothing, ex nihilo in the Latin terminology. Creation is ex nihilo, from nothing. But when we say from nothing, we mean simply that it's something that's incomprehensible. In order to grasp the incomprehensible, we have to a certain extent, lose our restrictions. We have to lose our own sense of limitation, our own sense of self. that losing the sense of self is a chokhmah quality. As it says about chokhmah, v'ha-chokhmah ma'ayin timotzei, which is usually translated as chokhmah comes from nothingness. Actually, the literal translation is, it's a question, where does chokhmah come from? But if we don't read it as a question, but simply as a statement, v'ha-chokhmah ma'ayin timotzei, chokhmah comes from nothingness. It comes from the nothingness of keter, because keter is an undefined state. The first state of definition is really in chokhmah, but chokhmah is only it's like a point. Everything is only in very, very subtle and rudimentary form. And when we say rudimentary form, we mean it in a positive sense, not in a negative sense. It hasn't yet come fully into limitation, into definition. Chokhmah is always in a state of returning to nothingness. It comes from nothingness and it's in a state of returning to nothingness. That's why I say the Chokhmah ma'ayin timotzei. It's always coming out. The Taf shows that it's a state of always coming into being. It's not something that was, it's something that is ongoing. Chokhmah is an ongoing process of self-nullification, returning to the source and then coming back and returning and coming back. Chokhmah is in a state of ratzah v'shov. It's in a state of running and returning, a state of returning to its original source and then coming back down into existence. So it's sort of an existence which hovers but is not fixed. So when we say that, according to the Sefer Yetzirah, that the channel of this particular month is from Gevura to Chokhmah, what we are saying is we're going from a state of restrictions, which Gevura is a state of restriction, to a state of non-being, to a state of transcendent being, let's put it that way, to a state of transcendent being. And that is called, in fact, the whole concept of hiluch, of progress, of moving, of walking. Now let's just think about that for a minute. There's a statement by the Kotzker Rebbe, the Grand Rabbi of Kotsk, the Hasidic Rebbe, who said the following statement. He said, humans and angels both have advantages and both have disadvantages. What's an angelic being? Essentially, an angelic being is really just an emissary. It's a divine emissary of one sort or another. In other words, a certain force, which is there to provide to fulfill a certain task. It's just a mission. That's what an angel is. An angel is a mission. Some of those missions are permanent, and most missions are really temporary. So every time there is an angel, and it's usually a new one. It's not one that was there before, unless the task is a permanent task. It's only some angels are permanent angels, but most of them are only temporary. In any event, the advantages of angels are that they can't fall. Their disadvantage is they can't rise. They're fixed in that particular quality, whatever it is that they're associated with. Angels also associated with the Sfirot, with all of the Sfirot. And according to that, it's sort of a fixed quality. Very much like, although of course there's a difference, but just like certain animals, an animal can't change its personality. A cow is not suddenly going to start eating rabbits. And a lion is not going to start eating grass. Right? That's just the way it is. Each animal has its nature. It's fierce, and it's very intense in what it is, and it's not going to change it. The only thing that can change that is a human being. Even angels don't change their nature. If an angel is an angel of chesed, it's going to remain an angel of chesed. It's not going to change into an angel of gvura. An angel of gvura is going to do the opposite. It's always gvura and never chesed. So therefore, the angels, they can't fall because they have that particular quality that they are. On the other hand, they don't rise. And why don't they rise? Because they're that fixed quality. That's what he said about angels. Human beings are the opposite. They also have an advantage and disadvantage. The disadvantage of human beings is that they can fall. But the advantage is that they can rise. They can go to a higher level. This is the concept of hiluch, of moving, of movement. The ability to move, the ability to transcend oneself, to go from gvura to chokhmah is a particularly human quality. It's a quality of progress. And only human beings really are associated with that idea. Now, essentially, to be able to get to a certain, from point A to point B, one has to know that one is going to point B. There has to be a direction. I think I might have mentioned in a previous class that a GPS is a wonderful thing. It can tell you where, it can tell you how to get from point A to point B. Waze or one of these other Google Maps can tell you how to get to point A, from point A to point B, and it's fantastic. It just gets you the right way. It's the traffic. It tells you where the hazards are, and so on and so forth. Great thing. However, however sophisticated a GPS device is, one thing it can tell you. It can't tell you where you want to go to. It can tell you how to get to where you want to go, but it cannot tell you where to go. That has to come from a framework sort of outside of the GPS. So one can use a map, but a destination is a very different thing. Chokhmah is a destination. Chokhmah is a destination. This month, the month of Sivan, tells us what the destination is. The destination is essentially the ability to receive the Torah. That's what in this month, it's a month that we celebrate on the 6th and 7th of the month. We celebrate the giving of the Torah. The giving of the Torah. So essentially that is our goal. Our goal is the end point for which the destination which we're trying to achieve is not the giving of the Torah that was given once. It's the receiving of the Torah. We have to receive it. We have to receive this idea. What's the Torah? The Torah is the Bible, the biblical canon essentially, and primarily what was given on that date was the it was the 10 Commandments and subsequently the 5 books of Moses. So those the Chumash, as it's called in Hebrew, Chamisha Chumshei Torah, the 5 books of Moses. So the 10 Commandments were given on that day, and the 10 Commandments are the encapsulation of all of the teachings. Essentially, all of the teachings of the Torah are enclosed in that, in those 10 Commandments. In fact, the Zohar says that the first letter of the 10 Commandments, which is the letter Aleph, contains everything else in it as well. And then goes on to describe and explain how this is so. So, the idea of this month then is the idea that we are attempting to provide ourselves with the destination. The destination is how to receive, once again, and in a higher form than last year, in a higher manner than last year, to receive the essential teachings which essentially make us human beings. That is the concept of progress. Progress is moving towards, if you could say it like this, moving towards our higher selves. Now, the symbol for the month is the symbol of twins. I think it's in English what we call Gemini, the twins. And we have to understand how this works, what the connection between twins and progress is. Well, we all know that we weren't born with wheels. We were born with legs, 2 legs. And the idea of being able to progress, to move forward, requires that you shift your weight from one foot to the other foot, to the next, to the other foot, to the other foot, and so on and so forth. It's a constant shifting backwards and forwards from one leg to the next leg, from one leg to the next leg, and keeping balance while we're doing it. this idea of twins actually represents that idea. The twins are essentially Chesed and Gvura. Chesed and Gvura, the two Sfirot of Chesed and Gvura. And in order to progress, we're always like tacking from one to the other, tacking from one to the other. What that basically means that in life, progress doesn't happen just as it doesn't happen when you're sailing a boat and there's not a lot of wind. You don't sail straight. You have to tack from side to side to catch the wind. Similarly with walking, we can't just like roll along. We have to move from one foot to the next foot to the next foot to the next foot, etc., and put our feet forward. Moving forward requires changing from right foot to left foot, from left foot to right foot. Same thing in life, from right to left, from left to right. In other words, from positive circumstances to perhaps not such positive circumstances. There's always change going on. But if the change is directional, in other words, if the change is seeking Chokhmah, we are seeking wisdom, we are seeking that self-transcendence, then the change is a positive thing. Then we are moving forward. We're not just moving around in circles. We're moving forward, we're moving towards a destination. And that is basically what the month comes to tell us. That this concept of movement, of progression, requires us to understand that on the one hand we have to have a destination, and on the other hand we have to be very willing to accept that you don't always go straight to your destination. In fact, very rarely do you go straight to the destination. There's going to be a right tack and then a left tack and a right tack and a left tack, and you're going to get there in a process of a roundabout kind of a way that sometimes may seem like regression rather than progression. It may seem like that. But as long as we have our eyes on the goal, as long as we know sort of where we're going to, then that is the thing that we ought to be focusing on, what our destination is. And then it won't be, it'll be much less likely that we'll be going around in circles and not getting anywhere. So to sum up, destination and the willingness to be able to contain opposites in moving towards that destination. Sometimes up, sometimes down, and so on and so forth. Okay, that is basically the idea. Let's have some questions. From Terry, all cells die and are born, they go to nothing and come back to do something, just we have developed besides the tool. CRISPR, I'm not sure what that is. So we can master how to go about something from nothing and mastering and practicing this. Yes. We can master how to bring something from nothing and mastering and practicing this. Yes, absolutely. Now, Terry actually brings an important point, something that I didn't mention. We said before that there's really a two-way street here, from Chokhmah to Gvura and from Gvura to Chokhmah. The destination idea of Gvura to Chokhmah, going up the path towards self-transcendence, doesn't mean that we stop at self-transcendence. That self-transcendence then has to be translated into action. It has to be translated into this world. In other words, we have to bring it from that mastery, from the level of self-transcendence into actuality, into manifestation. And then we move again. That's going up and going down. At the same time, as the Rebbe of Kotz said, we have an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage is we can go up. The disadvantage, we can go down. We can fall. However, it's not always a disadvantage to fall. Sometimes falling is part of the next step upwards. There's a verse that says like this, Sheva yipol tzadik v'kam. 7 times a righteous person falls and rises. Now, 7 is not necessarily the only number over there. In other words, it's not limited to 7 times, but it means it often happens that even a person of superior wisdom, of superior achievement, of superior qualities of character, a tzaddik, a righteous person, even such a person has a fall. falls from that level and then again rises up. The point is to move forward, even though there may be temporarily a feeling of falling backwards, or not just a feeling. There may be clearly a situation where we seem to be moving the wrong way. But as long as we understand that that's just a tack to one way or the other, we're tacking to the left or to the right in order to move forward, then it's fine. In other words, regress is part of progress. Sometimes it happens, and very often it happens before a big move forward, that we seem to fall back, and then if we fall back, then we hopefully will have the energy to sort of run and jump over the barrier, to run forward and jump over the barrier. As you know, to get over a wall or a fence or something, to jump over the fence, usually most people can't just jump from where they're standing. They have to take a few steps back, right? You take a few steps back, and then you can run and jump over the top. That's the kind of idea of regress in order to progress, going back in order to go forward. And in this, we also emphasize the idea that this is the month of twins. The twins are essentially the two legs, or the two shifts in balance from right to left, left to right. But the twins are also the relationship between the soul and God. That's also called twins, because the soul is made in the divine image. The soul is made in the divine image. So therefore, in a sense, we are the younger twin, if you want to call it that, or the minor twin, if you could say that, of God. And as we know, twins are usually much closer together than people who are not twins. They've done studies about this. And even twins who were separated at birth seem to have a lot of the same qualities, and they were brought up in different families, have a lot of the same qualities and reactions and responses to similar situations, even though they were never. So there's something about twins; they're sharing the same DNA that makes them twins. Same thing with us. We are called Tomati of God, right? Yanasi Tomasi. We sometimes call the dove or the pigeon of God, sometimes called Tamasi. Tamasi means my pure one, from Shira Shir in the Song of Songs. But our sages say, don't read it as Tamasi, my pure one. God is saying about the soul is my pure one. But he's saying To'omati. So the sages read it as To'omati, my twin. So the twins, therefore, are God and the soul. And they kind of move together. The way God thinks, we also ought to be thinking, and in many cases do. And just as one twin, being of the same genetic material, sort of helps the other, so too, we can be sure that in our progress forward, we are getting a lot of help from the other twin, from the one who is above, and will help us to move forward in that way. All right, any other questions?